Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So I'm really excited for today's video. I know I say that all the time, but this one, like more than any that I've done in a very long time. I just got in my Life's a Drag palette from Lunar Beauty by MannyMua, and I am so excited to play with it. I have not swatched it. I have not touched it at all. We're just going to do a first impression. I'm going to put a look together with it. So if that's something you're into, make sure to keep on watching. And please don't forget to subscribe because I do upload twice a week, and that is the best way to stay up to date on all the fun stuff I am posting. Also, there is still a giveaway going from my last video, the BoxyCharm unboxing for the month. So make sure to check that out and enter to win an entire June BoxyCharm box. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first things first, I actually did also pull out the MannyMua Makeup Geek collaboration palette because there are some similarities between the two and I want to talk about those. But this palette is stunning. Packaging, 1000% is a win. I'm loving this frosted holographic rainbow on the front. These are Manny's eyes in full drag, which I feel like every male in the beauty industry has started in drag a little bit. I mean, the first like dozen times I put on makeup at all, it was drag. So it's really interesting to see how like we all have these similar backstories, but then how far we take it. Now, I have always been a huge fan and huge supporter of Manny. The reason is that when you look at like Patrick Starr, who's more on the drag side, and Jeffree Star, who's more on the androgynous, I've always been a male who enjoyed wearing makeup, which is very different than a lot of the people out there who are more interested in drag or androgyny or playing around with that. I cannot pull off androgynous. I am very clearly male. So I really like that there's somebody out there who also embraces the fact that he is male. But, you know, there's a place in the beauty community for him and me and everyone. So it is a 14 shade palette. There are, I'm going to show you the inside. There are 11 mattes, 1 satin, and 2 shimmer shades. This retails for $48. I don't think that's right, $45. I'll link how much I paid for it. I don't remember, but it is beautiful. I mean, I'm loving this dichotomy of the neutrals and the brights. And I'm hoping that the camera is doing it justice. I've noticed in a lot of reviews and pictures, these shades look very pastel, and in person, they are super vibrant. So I hope you're getting the depth of these and that it's not just showing as pastel because they are far from it. So I am gonna actually go right in on the eyes and not do swatches just because I don't really like finger swatches. But the one thing I will say, I pulled out the Manny Makeup Geek palette that I've had for a long time, and I love this palette. Like, this is one of my staple palettes when I'm traveling just because it has everything you need. But the first thing I will say is this shade right here in the middle, Sora, this shade right here, Sickening, are basically the same shade. I'll swatch them next to each other and at the end and insert them, but they look very similar. Hunty right here, the cool toned brown, is very similar to Frappe right here. Then you have Trade right here, which is a very warm toned brown, which down here you have a very similar shade Aphrodite. And then Mars, this very pretty burnt cranberry, is Snatched right here. So clearly these are 4 shades that Manny really likes and really wanted to play around with. Obviously the formulas are going to be different and I'll insert swatches of that, or I'll end up cutting this out of the video if they are different. But that's just something that I noticed right off the bat is those 4 shades are ones that I normally would gravitate towards. So another thing, this does come with a 2-sided brush. I normally get rid of these. I don't like brushes that come with palettes. However, Manny said that this is good, so I'm going to play around with it and I'm actually going to use this today. The one thing I've noticed is that everyone who's been doing a review on this palette has been going out of their comfort zones. If they're pretty much brights, they've been going neutral. If they're pretty much neutral, they've been going brights. I've been doing a lot of blues lately. I feel like I always live in this general vicinity, and I have a bunch of pink and purple looks. So the only shade that's really intimidating to me is this yellow shade Campy right here. So that's gonna be the look I'm going for. It's gonna be very yellow and hopefully this doesn't go wrong. So I did already prime my eyes and I'm gonna go right in with that Campy shade and I'm gonna stamp that all around the outer portion of the lid. First things first, I am getting color payoff. I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but it is layering up the color nicely. Something that I've noticed with a lot of these bright shades in a lot of palettes is that When you go in with such a vibrant shade, you should probably go in with a sticky base because that'll give you the highest pigment payoff. But this is actually, we're getting quite a bit of yellow there, so I'm not mad at the shade. Then turning my brush on the side, I'm gonna take a little bit more and I'm gonna gently buff that into the crease. That's gonna kind of serve as a transition and it's just gonna be a gradient of that same yellow. No, okay, I'm not a fan of the brush. I'm gonna dip into my brushes just to give these a really fair shot. And I'm just going to buff some of that yellow into the crease. Okay, now I have been holding the palette vertical using the mirror, and I have been going in on that yellow shade, and there's really no kick up coming, which I'm like, if I run my finger right along the colors, there's a little bit of yellow. But honestly, the fact that there's really not a lot of kick up in the pans and it's not falling into the pink makes me very happy. Then on that same crease brush, I'm going to dip into Sickening right here, and I'm just gonna take that to start deepening up the crease. And then just taking a different brush with that same shade, I'm just gonna diffuse that a little bit on the outer portion of the lid. Then going into Mug down here on a very light hand, I'm just gonna focus that on the very outer corner. And then again, just blending. Okay, so the first thing I will say that I'm noticing about these shades, they are very pigmented. So normally, like, I'll dip into a shade, I'll go in and I'll just start buffing. You really can't buff with the shades I've used so far. You're gonna wanna like stamp it on and then blend, because if you just go in and you just start buffing, it's gonna kind of grab a little bit, but like that's just, you overcompensate and you go in a different way. But if you do go in gently, these shades are beautiful. So then dipping back into that yellow, I'm just going to re-intensify that a little bit. Then I'm gonna take a little bit of Cake Face, the white, and I'm just going to hit up the upper portion of the eye. It's gonna kind of serve as a brow bone highlight as well, but it's more than that because I'm gonna basically use that to clean up any of that yellow. When you go in with a yellow, it could very quickly turn like jaundice and sickly. So I just like to take a white shadow anytime I use yellow, which is not often, mind you, and just use that white shadow to just kind of clean up that upper lid space. Then on a very small brush, we're going to dip into Shady, the black, and I'm gonna take a very little bit, and I'm really just going to put that right on the outer portion of the eye. Holy crap. I did not expect that much pigment, but that's okay. We're just going to blend that in towards the lid and up into the crease. Okay, this black is fantastic. So I went in a little heavier than I wanted to, but it was effortless to blend it out to make that work. A lot of times when you go in with a black, that'll go like somewhere you don't want it to, and you're shit out of luck. Nothing you could do about it because there's that much pigment. With this is one of the really good true blacks where you can deposit the color and then just effortlessly blend it where you want it. You could even, I'm sure, blend this away, which with most shadows is not desirable, but with a black, it is very desirable. Now, because this black got a little more intense than we wanted, we're gonna go back into Mug, the brown, and we're just going to take that a little further onto the lid because we do want to gradient the color a little bit, and because that black is so dark and the yellow is so bright, we kind of want to blend those two together just so that it doesn't become too stark a contrast. And then once again, we're just going to re-intensify that yellow. You obviously don't need to. You can use this yellow more as a transition-y shade, but because this is kind of the statement color today, I really wanted to make sure that it is really visible the entire look. Next on my finger, I'm gonna take Legendary, the gold. Ooh, that's really pretty. And I'm going to stamp that on the inner portion of the lid. Then I'm just going to bring those browns in a little bit towards that gold. Okay, this is already pretty intense and a very pretty foil, but just to test it out, I am gonna take it on a brush with some Fix Plus, just to see how well we can amp it up a bit. Oh, okay, yep. Okay, so that is really foiled. So I'm just gonna throw a little bit of a black liner in the waterline, and then on a pencil brush, I'm gonna take a little bit of black, the shady, and I'm actually just gonna set down that liner. Then on another pencil brush, I'm gonna take a little bit of Hunty, the cool toned brown, and I'm just going to smudge that out a little bit on the outer portion of the lid. I said lid, I meant under eye. It's been a long morning. And finally, on a large pencil brush, this one is like double the size of the first one, I'm gonna take that yellow shade again, and I'm going to actually like really intensely stamp that on the inner portion of the under eye. And then once that's built up to where we can actually see it, taking a little more of that yellow, we're gonna blend that around the entire under eye. I lied. I'm gonna take a little bit of Legendary, that gold, and I'm actually gonna drag the gold all the way to the inner corner. All right, I'm gonna go throw on some lashes and liner, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I did swatch the side-by-side shades. The current Manny palette is the one on the right on every comparison. So what I will say is, in its heyday, when this wasn't 2.5 years old, and like, okay, so like you'll see how horrible this is gonna swatch, because again, this is a very old palette and mostly dried out, but the shades are very similar. It seems like everyone I got out of this was a little dustier and a little bit older, so that would explain that. But the colors being very similar on 4 out of 14 shades really doesn't bother me, especially because they are staple shades that I will go to over and over again. Ugh. Every time I'm filming and I leave my makeup wipes out to take off swatches and stuff, they get warm and it's like no fun. Like, I love when it's like a nice, cool, refreshing makeup wipe, and I leave them in front of my lights and they get really warm and it's kind of gross. And that's the finished look. So this is my gold and yellow smoky eye. I am so happy that I dipped into this yellow, because it'll be a shade that otherwise, like, I'll use every other shade in the palette, but that's the shade that like 2 years down the road, you'll look at it, I'll hit pan on everything and that yellow will basically be untouched. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. All in all, I will say packaging is a 10 out of 10. The formula is fantastic. I'm just gonna go ahead and swatch these 6 shades that I did not use. Okay, so the only shade that I'm not really feeling is Kiki, the mint green that you can barely see. I know that in his reveal video, Manny did mention that this shade was more of a transition and it was meant to kind of tie things together, which I could definitely see it doing. I would rather go in with a lighter hand on a more pigmented shade and kind of make it dusty on my own, as opposed to having one that was just a dusty shade, because it's kind of a waste for me. But, you know, you never know if it was a formulation thing, if the shade just didn't get right, or maybe he genuinely did want a dusty green shade and it is doing what he said it did. So there's really no issue there, because he was very upfront about it. But I love it, because these are the shades I would normally gravitate towards: the pinks, the purples, the deep cranberry, and this beautiful pink rose gold. But I'm really happy that I went with these, because like I said, like, this is the shade I wouldn't ever really touch. So thank you very much for watching. 1000% I will say that this palette is worth getting. I recommend it wholeheartedly. And like, I'm just so inspired to play around with this, do things that are a little more colorful, do things that are a little more drag, because honestly, that's pretty fun. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.